Welcome to the Criminal Defense Show, where we dive into the exciting world of criminal defense attorneys. I'm your host, Kelly Carpenter. My guest today is Richard Middlebrook. Richard has a thriving DUI practice in Bakersfield, California, Middlebrook Associates. He is a founding member of the DUI Defense Lawyers Association and a current board member, and he's tried over 250 DUI cases during his 27-year career, with a very impressive success rate, I might add. Hi, Richard. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
We're happy you're here. We want to get to know you a little bit better. What can you tell us about your practice and how you got started as a lawyer?
Sure. Practice is exclusive to DUI defense. All we do is focus on those accused of driving under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or a combination of both. There are some obvious issues that come along with that in other areas of criminal practice, for instance, driving on a suspended license or things like that, all the way through to and including DUI murder cases as second-degree murder. Got started as a lawyer 27 years ago. I went to the University of California, Davis School of Law. Before that, I did my college degree at a little Lutheran college in Thousand Oaks, California. Once I graduated, came down to Bakersfield, started with the DA's office here, and eventually went out on my own in 1995.
What are you typically responsible for as far as the day-to-day operations?
We work as a team overall and everything. We treat each case as all of our cases. So we don't have particular attorneys assigned to particular cases. They're all inevitably my case, with the attorneys assisting and the paralegals assisting us. I do have direction over the administration portion of it as well, dealing with client concerns or questions. I meet with clients on a daily basis, negotiations. I basically do all the things you would expect of an attorney in a law practice, in addition to the management of the staff and personnel.
Okay. And how do you prioritize your time and responsibilities? Like, do you have any processes or systems that work really well for you?
There's some things that we do. We have a weekly meeting with the entire staff and attorney group. We meet every week to go through issues, concerns, new processes, procedures, what's working, what's not working, what can we improve. We have a meeting once a week with just the attorneys to go over new case law issues that are happening. We'll look at, for instance, what's working with particular DAs. Are there new judges coming in? Are there changes in policies and procedures within each of the courthouses that are going to affect our ability to do our job? So each of those things are things we'll meet with. Those two are generally speaking the most important parts of our week. It allows us to make slight course corrections within the week as opposed to doing enormous fixes later on.
I think that's so smart. Yeah, deal with things more proactively than wait for everything to pile up and then have a really big headache to deal with.
Exactly.
Well, thinking back at the history of your law practice and from where it started to where you are now, what are some challenges that you've overcome to help grow the practice or, get it to where it is today?
Sure. I think probably one of the most difficult things was to decide to do just DUI defense. When I came out in my practice early on from the DA's office, I had basically two different experiences. One was criminal prosecution. The other was back in 1994, the district attorney's office locally handled the prosecution and collection of child support matters for the state and for people who were owed child support. And so I had done both areas. I had done child support enforcement and I had done criminal prosecution. When I came out, I didn't really intend to be in my own business. I had been hired by the FBI as an investigator for the FBI. I had a date for Quantico to do my training. It was 6 months out to do it. And I kind of didn't have any job. I kind of left abruptly and didn't have any job between leaving and going to Quantico 6 months later. So I thought, well, what do I do for 6 months? I certainly had to have an income. And so I decided, well, I'll take a few cases here and there. And when I started to take a few cases, I did so in family law and criminal defense, which were the only two areas that I felt like I knew well enough to do on my own without any supervision. Well, in the first 3 months, I realized I was making a great deal more income than I would ever make being a employee of the Federal Bureau of Investigations. So the biggest challenge that I ended up facing was I started doing family law and criminal defense at first generally, although my focus was always really primarily on DUI. So I met with an incredible business consultant who came in, and I always was a little embarrassed about admitting that I needed help, but I was trained to be a lawyer. I wasn't trained to be a businessman.
Right.
And so she came in and met with me, and she asked me just a simple question. She just simply said, what would you do in the practice of law if you could? And I said, well, I'd get rid of any other criminal areas because I don't want to do any other criminal area. I would get rid of family law and I'd just do DUI. And she said, well, why haven't you done that? And I said, well, there's a lot of reasons. I'll make half my money out of family law. I painted myself into a corner. How am I supposed to support my staff and my family taking a 50% cut? And she said, well, why would you have to take a 50% cut? I said, well, that's half my practice. And I said, so she just made a simple suggestion. She said, why don't you just stop taking family law cases and just take DUI cases? And they'll just naturally fade away. And I said, well, yeah, but what happens if I only get this many DUI cases? And we explored a little bit about how many attorneys in the state of California actually only practice DUI defense. And what it came down to was about 15. And so very few out of the hundreds of thousands of lawyers that were practicing in California, only about 15 exclusively did DUI defense. And she said, you're in a pretty small company. You're not really competing against thousands of lawyers for this business. And if you can make yourself stand out by really specializing in an area, as opposed to being a practitioner of all areas of criminal defense, do you think maybe that would improve your opportunities? And I said, I don't know. What do you think? And she said, I think it will. And she was right. By giving up the idea of being a jack of all trade, master of none, I became extraordinarily successful. My practice doubled within the first 6 months after stopping family law. I became well known in the area of DUI defense. Probably the biggest hurdle that you mentioned in doing that was I never really felt like a family law lawyer. I always felt like I was an imposter, right? Because I would practice DUI work as well. And I never really felt like a criminal lawyer because I was also doing family law. So I was an imposter in both areas, and I always felt that way. So I wouldn't get the kind of training I needed. I wasn't going to the meetings and really getting the seminars that I needed to keep improving in both areas. So I was very mediocre at both and didn't really excel because I felt like, well, if I excel at DUI, then am I really even more of an imposter in family law? And the exact opposite was true, as if I excelled in family law, would I be an imposter in driving under the influence cases? So once I picked one, it was the greatest thing ever for my practice. It changed my fortunes completely. I went from in the end, it quadrupled my income. So I was very happy with it.
That's a really powerful story. And there's so many attorneys out there who are nervous to get more specific and to hone in on one practice area. But your story is a case in point why you should really explore that idea. And also your mental health, like you like handling DUI cases. You don't have to deal with the BS of the family law circle that you weren't into. So there's a benefit that way as well. Just, what do you like doing and how can you make that work in your practice?
Those kind of things really make a difference in my life and it makes me happy. So now I practice probably 9 months a year and travel 3 months at least a year.
Well, looking back, at all the things you've learned throughout the years, what are some things you know now that you really wish you had known in the beginning?
If I could go back and have a little conversation with myself back at the beginning of my practice, I think I probably would. There are certain things that I knew back then that have really been more emphasized now, and some things that I didn't know at all that I've learned. I'd say things like the old adages about it takes you a lifetime to build up a reputation and a minute to lose it. That is absolutely true. And I've seen a lot of good lawyers forget that and lose their practices and their livelihoods as a result of that, making one or two bad decisions that they thought were okay in the vacuum, and they weren't. I was very proud of the fact that I've really tried to run an extraordinarily ethical practice, that I really look out for my clients, to remind myself that clients really are the backbone of the business, and the fact that serving them is the only reason we are here. And I remind my staff, we are very lucky that people believe in us, regardless of how. They may have heard of my reputation, they may have heard about the win results, they may have heard about the number of cases I've handled, they may have read some things on the web page or in videos I've done or talks I've done. But I'm always feel very grateful, because they could have gone anywhere and spent their money anywhere, and they believed in us enough to spend a lot more than a lot of other attorneys charge, because we work a lot harder than most attorneys work to get the results that we get. And I would have reminded myself that, remember why you do this. It's, the side perks of it. It's great that I can travel, and I'm very lucky that after 27 years, I don't have to work as hard as I did during the first. Things that I've learned is don't ever burn your bridges with a DA. They tend to stick around a long time, and you burn your bridge and it's burnt forever. But I would also remind myself that standing up for what you believe and for a good case really carries you a lot farther than kowtowing. I really believe that some of my greatest moves forward in my business and my personal life has been because I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about what was going to happen as a result of it, but that I stood up for my client, sometimes going to trial at great deal of personal expense and time for me, pissing off DAs to do it, but winning the case.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, you mentioned it earlier regarding the science of DUI. It's obviously a scientific practice area. You've got to know the science behind it and how to interpret it and analyze it.
Yeah, the science is absolutely, it's the only thing that gets you to a win. DUI is very interesting. It's the only crime that you're convicted of by a box, by a number, right? No mechanical device. Nobody convicts you of you're not convicted of burglary by a machine. If someone sees you breaking into a house, they're in the house, they see you, they identify you in court and say, that's the person who broke through the window and was rifling through my jewelry drawer. But in DUI, it's very different. You are convicted because a machine says you are above a certain level, at least to one part of the DUI. So one of the things of being a lawyer scientist is, for the most part, we have at least 10 times more training in the area of blood alcohol than the lab techs who are coming in to testify. So if you know more than they do, and by now it's pretty well out that we do, they don't try to talk around you. They don't try to talk over you. They don't try to fool you with big scientific words in court that sound really good, but don't really mean anything. When you can tear that apart and bring it down to its base elements, and not only that, but explain it to a jury, what do these things mean? How does alcohol really affect you? What are you going to see, and when are you going to see it? You're hopefully able to hold the state, the counties, the labs accountable for what they do. Those kind of things can really affect you in the long run. But it's important to know the science, or else you can't make head nor tail of what they give you. You can ask for all the documents, but if you can't read them, it doesn't matter.
So true. We've covered a lot of ground today. Obviously, you've talked about so many important things. Is there any other advice that you want to give to listeners, just based on your experience, based on what you know, anything along those lines?
So it's really easy, and I've seen lots of firms pop up and fail very quickly because they forget that it's really easy to advertise that you're the best in the world and you're super good at what you do and you're number one. And you can fluff and say all that stuff. Got to put the work in behind it. You got to earn that stuff. Don't say things that aren't true, because eventually it will come out. They will show that you aren't all you're advertising to be. There's nothing wrong with getting your message out and getting your brand out. That's absolutely important. And in this day and age, it's even more important to establish the brand and to let people know who you are. In the same breath, you can't just fluff. You just can't say you're the best DUI attorney in the county. And then not be it. You're marketing you, and that's all you have. And if you lose who you are, there's no way to recreate you.
There's not. And that's something you can't get back, or it's really hard to backpedal when that happens.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Your marketing needs to be authentic to you, and you've got to back it up with action. You've got to stand true to what you say. And that's just the way to do it. It is.
The saying that, if somebody likes you, they'll tell one or two people, but if they don't, they'll tell everybody, is also true. And, it's very hard to distinguish on sites such as, Avo or Yelp and places like that. If you have 50 good reviews, everybody wants to see the bad one.
For sure. And you're right. When you're looking for any business, whether it's a lawyer or a salon or a restaurant, you are looking for the bad reviews. The good ones, you're like, okay, that's good. But you are looking for the bad ones. And a pro tip, and I don't know if you guys do this, but anytime you do get a bad review, responding to it is so important. Not because you're responding to that person and talking to them, you're talking to your whole entire audience, and
right.
They're measuring you based on how you reply. And sometimes you can even turn a negative into a positive with the way that you interact with that person and what you say.
Couldn't agree more. And part of what I try to do is manage expectations. And that's probably the last thing I would tell you about, other things. Managing your clients' expectations are extremely important. Unfortunately, a lot of attorneys want to promise the world. They want to tell everybody I'm going to win this case. You're going to get a dismissal. You're going to walk away scot-free. This is going to be awesome and wonderful. And then when they do anything short of that, they failed their client, at least in their client's eyes. And so it's really important to explain up front, there's a lot of people involved, especially in a criminal practice. There are DAs, there's judges, there's probation department workers, there's police officers, all of which have a say in it. And if you can't make them understand that, they're not paying you as a bribe, you're not taking half the money they pay you and handing it to the DA for a dismissal. This is about experience, time, effort, energy, knowledge, background, training, to try to get the results you want. I kind of liken it, and I have every conversation with a new client. I say, listen, think of this as you're going to a doctor and you've received a diagnosis that you have a cancer. You want to get better. I want you to get better. We both want it. And I'm going to do everything I can to do that. But not everybody walks out of the other end of it healthy and happy and gets to stick around. So we all want the same thing, but you're not paying a doctor for a cure. You're paying the doctor to do everything they can to find the cure for you. And with that, most people get that up front. As long as you're honest with them and up front, and you don't try to play Superman where you're going to save the day, and are realistic about what they should expect and what's fair to expect, they honor that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Managing expectations, super, super important. Agreed. Well, Richard, thank you so much for being with us today. You've been amazing. Where can people go to find out more about you if they want to look you up?
Sure. Probably the best place is the website. And that's KernCountyDUI.com, KERN County, COUNTY.DUI.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. We'd love having you.
Thanks.
Well, if you found today's episode helpful, we hope that you will share it with everyone in your circle. And if you'd like to read notes about today's podcast, you can do that on www.scorpion.co. That's .co without the N. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time.